My photographic practice consists of building sculptural scenarios for the camera that usually talk about human rights violations in the greater Middle East, but more specifically in Iran. I think a lot about historical avant-gardes and how avant-gardes or artistic avant-gardes are shaped by societal upheavals and how societal upheaval could influence. So I think as far as artistic influence goes, my first would actually be Hannah Hirsch, Dada collage, thinking about how the body and the human is mechanized and how collage can mechanize a human being. And so I oftentimes use political figures and cut them apart and reconstruct them to suggest the mechanized human being. So I think I start with Dada collage. These power economies are dominated by masculinity, and I think they hold power over women's bodies, and that's something that I talk about a lot in my work. So growing up in a household with two parents that are political refugees from Iran, I heard a lot of stories about their time when they were in hiding and my mom being imprisoned and tortured and my father escaping over the borders because he was an activist. So I oftentimes use political leaders. I'll use sourced images of human rights victims. Most recently, I've been using images of women that have been executed by the Islamic Republic. I think my process is very research-driven. I think a lot about what am I trying to communicate, what's my idea, and how can I best communicate it. So it first starts off with finding images, and I have images, folders of images from the internet or from the dark web relating to what my idea is. So for this image specifically, I'm thinking a lot about, the Afghanistan and Iraqi invasion. This image specifically is of an oil field in Iraq. The images are actually often pixelated because they're scaled for web. So when they're pixelated, I think it's a nod to their source originally, that I'm finding these online and printing them out. And then I started playing around with other indicators, like what other symbols can inform this backdrop. So thinking about cornflakes and cereal and how, corn was a crop that was planted after we invaded. It's not a crop that's native to the Middle East. Wheat is, but corn isn't. And the exports of the country after we invaded were just sent right back to the U.S. So what does it mean to dominate a country and take over? And it's like colonialism. It's compromising a culture, and one of the compromisations that happens is through food. So I think a lot about how politics are dominated by straight white men, and General Petraeus being one of those straight white men. I also think a lot about signifiers. So I'm thinking about war, I think about tanks, I think about army men, I think about, we think about Bush's administration, I think Texas, so I think cowboy boots. And how can all of these indicators come in? So then I start building and constructing, and then I start thinking about how can I also make these painterly. So I go in and oftentimes make symbols or marks with a lot of the source material images I'm thinking about. Oil being a mark to be made, the radial discs, thinking about bullets or X's marking spots on maps for places to drop bombs or invade. So everything in the image kind of relates to that.